As chaos erupts around the country, guns and ammo sales are through the roof. I know personally because you've heard it from me several times now. I went out and bought a bunch of guns. After saying earlier this year I would never have a gun in my house, I now have many guns, and it's been very, very difficult to find ammunition. But this story here may be one of the most wow stories I've ever seen. County voters to decide on Second Amendment sanctuary status. You know what? I wouldn't have said this a year ago, but I think I completely agree with it. Listen, we're not talking about saying we won't allow people to arrest you for having a gun. We're talking about basically nullifying every single law pertaining to guns, including background checks. I kid you not. And this is in Oregon. Take a look at this story from Como News. They say, Astoria, Oregon. A measure on the November ballot will ask voters in a northwestern Oregon county whether it should be a Second Amendment sanctuary. The Astorian reports voters in Clatsop County will decide whether to prohibit county resources from being used to enforce any local, state, and federal law or regulation that restricts the right to keep and bear firearms, accessories, or ammunition. The rule would cover any tax, levy, or fee on the purchase or ownership of firearms, tracking requirements, background checks, confiscation orders, or any restriction on the open or concealed carrying of firearms. Wow. It's not the first time we've seen things like this, but I'm not sure the other sanctuary claims went that far. I mean, in Virginia, we saw a lot of declarations about sanctuary counties where they wouldn't confiscate people's guns. But think about it. What they're saying in this county is that any restriction, you could walk around with like a light machine gun. Okay, here's a lot of things. Here's something that people don't really understand. You can actually buy a tank with like a full auto 50 cal or something like that. I was reading a story because these leftists like to claim, well, you can't own a tank. Actually, you can. It's really funny when they say things like, when the Second Amendment was written, they didn't actually mean like modern machine, like warfare machines. Like, you're not going to buy a Scud missile. My friends, did you know that back then there were things called privateers where individuals owned warships, and in Europe they would carry letters of marque, allowing them to go around as a privately owned warship, blowing up other ships, taking their stuff. Yeah, privateers. That's what it was. It was like, a lot of us imagine piracy was just, like rogue operatives, which existed, but a lot of it was sanctioned by their government as long as they attacked the enemy. So yeah, back then, the Second Amendment did allow you to have cannons and warships. So what would happen? I mean, this sounds like a great place to live. I wouldn't want to live in Oregon, mind you, but wow. If they pass this in November, are people going to go out and buy like, I'm not even going to speculate, but you can buy some real big guns. Like, there's got to be some restriction, right? Like, could you have artillery shells? Put a howitzer in your backyard and be like, no restrictions. I don't know. It sounds pretty crazy, but check this out. We got this story from Oregon Live. 3 reasons firearm sales have jumped 94%. This is from an OSU professor. They say, amid the COVID-19 pandemic and protests for racial justice, the Gun Industries Trade Association estimates that gun sales from March through July were up 94%. Firearms industry consultants estimate July sales alone were 2 million units. These estimates are based on the number of background checks conducted by the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. The FBI report that 8 of the weeks in this period are in the top 10 highest weeks since the agency began collecting data in 1998. Gun sales typically have seasonal cycles, with more guns being sold in winter months, and increase in presidential election years, and after high-profile mass shootings. However, the 2020 pandemic spurred record-setting surge in demand. They say, our research examines American gun culture and offers insights into the complex relationship between Americans and guns. We believe there are 3 general reasons why people are purchasing firearms. 1, independence and security. A study we presented in 2019 shows that Americans feel buying a gun is a way of asserting and maintaining independence. Independence is threatened during the pandemic, when a concern for public health may curtail some individual freedoms, including the freedom to travel, operate some businesses, assemble in large groups, or visit the elderly. Gun ownership can be motivated by the belief that having guns helps to ensure freedom to do and live as one chooses, particularly for individuals concerned with protection and defense. Kind of sounds like they're saying they're worried about the government taking over. Maybe not, but it does. The National Shooting Sports Foundation estimates that 40% of recent gun buyers are doing so for the first time, partly driven by citizens' perceived need to protect themselves in a period of uncertainty and civil unrest, as well as calls to defund the police. This idea is supported by data showing that more than 99% of recent sales are handguns, which are typically used for self-defense, and by research showing that buying a gun for self-defense can be motivated by feelings that the world is generally dangerous. Gun owners also find comfort and security in routines. This means existing gun owners may purchase additional guns in an effort to maintain a sense of normalcy. 2. Market signals and forces. Another reason relates to market conditions. Governors chose to include gun retailers as essential businesses, allowing them to remain open. This reinforced the legitimacy of guns and gun retailers in the U.S., strengthening perceptions of gun purchases as appropriate and necessary. Meanwhile, gun retailers have struggled to keep firearms, ammunition, and accessories in stock. When consumers face scarcity, they may experience a sense of urgency to purchase. This is a really good point that I think is often being missed. While most of us are assuming that the purchase of guns is due primarily to people being scared, it could be that there are a lot of people who are saying, oh man, if I don't get it now, I won't be able to. Not that they're actually scared about the end being nigh, but thinking, I kind of want one. If I don't go now, I won't get one. And then everyone rushes out, and then there's a shortage. That could be, that's a fair point to make. Social connection and recreation. They say, finally, guns can provide a tangible basis for social connection, social bonding through consumption. Retailers facilitate this by serving as a social hub and providing expertise on specific products. This, I think, is complete and utter BS. And, maybe. But gun people have their private clubs. They do their thing. I don't believe anyone's going out right now like, I'm bored. What can I do? I know I've never bought a gun before, but I'll go do it now. I think it's fair to say there is a certain aspect of this that people who already have guns are thinking, I'm going to go see what's up at the gun shop and go hang out and see what they're talking about, talk politics. That I get. Okay, so fine. Maybe I'm being a little harsh. But for the most part, I think people are scared. Riots are erupting and guns are being sold out, or mostly ammo. It's really hard to find ammo. My local shop, they got odd caliber bullets and a lot of birdshot. And I had a lot of people say to me, hey man, birdshot, it's not that bad. And my response is, yes, birdshot is better than no shot. I get it. But, if you had your choice, you'd want, buckshot, 9mm at least. I'm not a big gun person. Never have been. But I'm certainly starting to be. And my reason for buying weapons is because, for the most part, the unrest. I will not be caught with my pants down as rioting erupts across this country. And as we're entering into this election cycle where no one knows what's going to happen, I'm not only buying weapons, I'm getting as far away from these cities as I can. And that's fairly far away. So far, I ain't got no internet. That's the big problem with trying to move to this new expanded facility. No internet. I've actually got to call a company and see if they'll lay the lines down because there's no internet. So maybe I'll be able to do it. But I think there's a lot of reasons that people are motivated to finally get active. But it says something else. People are paying attention. People are absolutely paying attention. And while the left tries to claim that all the violence and everything is Trump's fault, I don't buy it. If people are rushing out to buy guns, they have some idea of what's happening. And they're not going to be blaming Trump for what's happening locally. They're going to be asking their local politicians to send the police out. John Doe and Jane Doe in the Bufu suburbs who are like, I'm going to buy my first gun, aren't calling up Trump and being like, why are there rioters outside my house? They're calling their councilmen. They're calling their aldermen. They're calling their mayor. They're calling their governor, their congressman or man or woman. And they're saying, what is happening in our neighborhoods and why won't you send the police? Federal police aren't patrolling my neighborhoods. And they're not patrolling yours either. I mean, most of yours. Some of them they probably are. Because feds do come out, right? Maybe in D.C. especially. Because they are federal police. But I'm pretty sure they're not blaming Trump for this. And if they're paying attention, they know who's really at fault for the chaos and who's not getting a handle on it. So I'll throw it back to this story coming out of Oregon. This will be really, really fascinating. I wonder what people will buy if they agree that there is no restriction at all on firearms. Can you define firearm for me? Are people going to have like directed energy weapons? Like, what's the restriction, man? This is going to be crazy. I think people are going to have fun with it. I think people might start making their own crazy weapons or whatever. A 2A sanctuary. That sounds amazing. Now, I do want to point out, Clatsop County, this is in northwestern Oregon. I don't know exactly what this is. Maybe it's more rural, but if it's northwestern, I'd imagine it's still in between Portland and, say, Tacoma or Seattle. So maybe not that rural, but rural enough. Either way, could you imagine what it's going to be like if these people have no restrictions and Antifa tries going through their town to like make it up or just end up in there, whatever? People are going to come out with the craziest things you've ever seen. Maybe I'm wrong. Not a gun person, but I'll leave it there. Next segment will be coming up tomorrow at 10 a.m. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.